Night fell over the city, casting a blanket of darkness over the streets and houses. Alex, a 28-year-old, was home alone, enjoying his rare night off. With the rainy weather outside, he decided it was the perfect occasion to watch a horror movie he had been putting off for a while. It was one of those scary classics that promised nightmarish nights. Alex prepared a bowl of popcorn, lit some candles to create a suitable atmosphere, and settled down on the living room sofa. He turned on the television and started watching the film, letting himself be drawn into the dark plot. The hours passed quickly as he immersed himself in the story. The occasional scare made him jump on the couch, but he was enjoying the experience. The film's dark atmosphere and unexpected twists kept you glued to the screen. The rain outside was gently tapping on the windows, adding an extra element of suspense to the night. The only sound in the house was the occasional noise of the wind and the film's creepy dialogue. It was exactly what Alex wanted, a night of entertainment and chills. As the film progressed, Alex began to notice something strange. The sounds of rain outside seemed louder and more disturbing than ever. Every drop that fell on the roof or hit the window echoed in the room, creating an eerie soundtrack for the film. Every time the wind blew, he swore he heard indistinct whispers. He tried to convince himself that it was just his imagination. After all, he was watching a horror movie, and his mind was naturally more sensitive to sounds and darkness. But something in the air felt different, a subtle sense of uneasiness. Even so, he continued watching the film, becoming involved in the plot and the scary characters. The minutes passed quickly, and Alex was increasingly immersed in the dark world of the story. That's when it happened. At the height of the film's tension, he had an inexplicable feeling that he was being watched. A shiver ran down his spine, and he felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He looked around the room but didn't see anything out of place. The candles were still lit, creating a dim light, and the sound of rain persisted outside. Alex tried to shake off the feeling of paranoia and turn his attention to the movie. He took a sip of the drink at hand and tried to ignore the discomfort that invaded him. But the feeling that someone was watching him persisted, like a shadow lurking in the corners of his mind. As the film progressed and the scares on screen became more intense, the feeling that something was wrong reached its peak. He turned off the television and stood, trying to shake off the feeling of fear that enveloped him. It was then that he heard a sound coming from upstairs. The sound was soft, barely audible, but enough to make him freeze. It was like a faint whisper, a murmur in the darkness. His heart started to beat faster, and he felt a chill run down his spine. The sound seemed to be coming from the master bedroom, and he couldn't ignore it. Carefully, Alex began to climb the stairs, each heartbeat echoing in his ears. The whisper continued, becoming clearer as he approached the room. He pushed the door open slowly, and what he saw left him speechless. The room was plunged into darkness, with only the faint light of the moon coming through the window. Alex could hear the whispers clearly now, but he couldn't identify where they were coming from. His heart continued to beat wildly as he peered into the darkness, hoping to see some clue as to the source of the whispers. It was then that he noticed a disturbing detail. The closet door was ajar, revealing a crack of darkness inside. Alex knew the closet door was closed before the movie started, so it couldn't be a coincidence. Someone, or something, had opened the closet door in his absence. Carefully, he approached the closet and, with a shaking hand, pushed the door completely open. What he saw made him let out a scream of surprise and horror. Inside the closet, there was an old doll with disheveled hair and empty eyes that seemed to follow his movements. The doll was sitting on a wooden chair with a red ribbon tied around its neck. The whisper he had heard before seemed to be coming from the doll's mouth, as if it was trying to speak. But the words were unintelligible, like a distorted murmur. Alex felt a shiver run down his spine as he stared at the sinister doll. He didn't remember seeing that doll before, and its presence there was inexplicable. He couldn't understand how she had appeared inside the closet, nor how he could have made those disturbing whispers. Deciding to move the doll away and put an end to the whispers, Alex took the figure in his hands. But when he touched the doll, something strange happened. The doll made a high-pitched sound, similar to a scream, and its empty eyes seemed to come to life for a moment. Startled, Alex dropped her to the floor, and the doll fell with a thud. His heart racing, he looked at the fallen doll, fearing that it might move again. However, the doll remained motionless on the floor. The whispers stopped, as if they had never happened. Feeling distraught and confused, Alex decided to put the doll back in the closet and close the door. He wanted nothing more to do with that sinister thing. When the closet door was closed again, he felt temporary relief. However, the feeling of being watched still tormented him. He decided to check the house to make sure he was alone. He walked through the other rooms, turning on the lights as he went. He found nothing out of place, but the feeling that something was wrong continued to haunt him. Upon returning to the living room, Alex decided it was best to finish the movie and go to bed. The night was already late, and he needed a good sleep to overcome the disturbing experience. He turned on the television and started watching the movie again, trying to distract himself from the restless feeling. However, as the film reached its climax, the feeling of someone watching him returned with a vengeance. He looked around the room, but nothing was out of place. Only the candles remained lit, creating a soft light in the dark room. Then he heard a sound that made his blood run cold. It was the sound of slow, shuffling footsteps coming from the stairs, as if someone was walking up towards him. The feeling of terror overcame him, and he stood up from the couch, looking toward the stairs. It was as if something was approaching, something that didn't belong in his house. With his heart in his mouth, Alex realized he wasn't alone at home. Something or someone was up there watching him, waiting, and he had no idea what to do next. Alex stood frozen in the middle of the room, listening to the slow, shuffling footsteps coming from the stairs. The feeling that someone or something was approaching him was overwhelming. He knew he couldn't just stand there and wait passively. Gathering his courage, he took a step towards the stairs and, with a shaking hand, grabbed a flashlight that was on the nearby table. He turned on the flashlight, illuminating the path in front of him, and began to climb the stairs cautiously. Each step he climbed seemed like an eternity, and the shuffling footsteps continued, getting closer and closer. The flashlight light illuminated the darkness, revealing the empty hallway upstairs. The feeling of being watched persisted, as if something was hiding in the shadows. He approached the master bedroom door, where the whispers had come from earlier. The door was ajar, and the dim moonlight cast an ominous shadow inside the room. With the flashlight in one hand and the other on the door handle, he slowly pushed it open, revealing the interior. The room was dark except for the flashlight light that swept the space. There was no one in sight, but the feeling that something was wrong persisted. It was then that he heard the whispers again, now clearer than ever. The whispers seemed to come from under the bed. Alex swallowed, feeling a knot in his stomach. He bent down and shined the flashlight toward the bed. What he saw horrified him. Under the bed, a dark figure lay, its eyes fixed on him. It was as if someone was hiding there, silently watching him. The figure appeared to be shrouded in shadow, making it impossible to identify any physical features. Alex took a step back, his mind struggling to process what was happening. He couldn't understand how someone could have hidden under the bed without him noticing. It was as if a horror movie nightmare had come true. With his heart hammering in his chest, he asked aloud, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" The figure under the bed didn't respond, just continued to look at him with dark eyes. Alex felt a wave of panic spread through his body. He knew he needed to act quickly to ensure his safety. He backed away toward the bedroom door, still shining his flashlight at the enigmatic figure. It was then that the figure began to move, sliding out from under the bed with slow, sinister movements. Alex screamed and ran into the hallway. He ran downstairs in the blink of an eye without looking back and ran towards the front door. The rain outside was falling heavily, and he didn't mind getting wet as he left the house. On the wet lawn, he stopped to catch his breath, looking at the house haunted by darkness. He had no idea who or what was inside that house, but he knew he needed help. Alex ran to the nearest neighbor's house and knocked on the door frantically, begging for help. The neighbor, frightened by Alex's panicked state, immediately called the police. When the police arrived at Alex's house, they did a thorough search but found no clue of the shadowy figure he had seen. Alex explained what had happened, but authorities were skeptical of the story. They suggested that he was just under stress and that his mind had played with him. However, Alex knew that what he had experienced was not a product of his imagination. Something sinister had observed him that night, something that didn't belong in the real world. Feeling like he could never return to that house again, Alex moved to a new place, determined to forget the terrifying experience. However, the memory of the shadowy figure under the bed would haunt him for the rest of his life, leaving him feeling like the nightmare had never ended. Months have passed since the terrifying night Alex was confronted by a shadowy figure beneath his bed. He had moved to a new apartment in a different area of the city, hoping to leave behind the trauma he had experienced in his old home. However, the memories of that night continued to haunt him, and he could not find answers to what had happened. He had sought help from therapists and psychologists to try to understand the experience, but no one seemed to have a logical explanation for what he had experienced. Authorities found no trace of the shadowy figure, and skeptics continued to believe it was a figment of Alex's imagination. However, he knew he was not crazy. He was sure something had been in that house, watching him, waiting. He could not forget the figure's shadowy eyes, nor the disturbing whispers he had heard in the darkness. One night, while surfing the internet looking for answers, he stumbled upon a paranormal forum. It was a place where people shared their supernatural experiences and sought help in understanding the unexplainable. Alex decided to share his story, hoping to find someone who had been through something similar. To his surprise, he began receiving messages from people who reported similar paranormal experiences. Many of them had stories of shadowy figures, whispers in the darkness, and feelings of being watched. Alex was not alone in his experience. A forum user who identified herself as Sarah contacted Alex. She had gone through an almost identical experience as him in her old home. Sarah was determined to find answers and understand what was happening. Together, Alex and Sarah began investigating their and other people's experiences on the forum. They found that many of the cases shared disturbing similarities. There were reports of shadowy figures that seemed to move through the shadows, unintelligible whispers, and a constant feeling of being watched. As they delved deeper into the investigation, Alex and Sarah discovered ancient stories and urban legends that aligned with experiences they and others had experienced. Something dark and inexplicable was happening, and they were determined to discover the truth. They decided to visit Alex's old house, where it all began. It was an act of courage, but they wanted to find any clue that would lead them to understand the mystery that haunted them. The house had been abandoned since the terrible night Alex had run away from it. Upon entering the dark and dusty house, they immediately felt a heavy and oppressive atmosphere. Each room seemed to hold dark secrets, and inaudible whispers echoed in his ears. They explored every corner of the house, taking photos and recording any anomalies they found. It was then that Alex noticed something strange on the master bedroom wall. An area of the wallpaper was peeling away, revealing an old design that had been hidden for years. It was a dark, distorted figure, with empty eyes and a disturbing smile. They photographed the drawing and continued to explore the house. While investigating the attic, Sarah found an old diary hidden under a pile of dusty objects. It was the diary of a former resident of the house, dating back decades. As they leafed through the yellowing pages, Alex and Sarah found disturbing accounts of paranormal experiences in that house. The diary author described shadowy figures, whispers in the darkness, and a constant feeling of being watched. It was as if the house had a dark history of inexplicable events. With the evidence in hand, Alex and Sarah returned to the paranormal forum and shared their findings. Other people also began to speak out, reporting similar stories that had occurred in the same region over the years. As they continued to investigate, the truth about the haunted house began to reveal itself. It was a place where the supernatural and the inexplicable intertwined, leaving a trail of mystery and fear. Whatever was in that house, it was far from a figment of Alex's imagination. They were determined to find out more about the dark secret the house held, no matter how terrifying it might be.